Welcome to Create Your Happy, the podcast that empowers conscious women in life, relationship, and business. I'm your host, Christy Holt, happiness hussy and conscious funpreneur on a mission to change the world one beautiful soul at a time. Now get ready, because on this very special bonus season, we are going to take your entrepreneurial journey to a whole nother level. These uncut conversations are designed to support you as you unleash your entrepreneurial brilliance upon the world. My incredible guests and I have come together with a shared vision to empower women to fully embrace their humanness, find their unique voice, and lead with love. All right, gorgeous, it's time to get curious and become inspired. It's time to create your happy. Welcome to this week's masterclass. I am super excited this week to have with me the beautiful Serena Curran. She is a Soul Liaison and Wealth Amplifier and has a ton of experience in a lot of different areas, which I am going to actually just right off the bat invite you, Serena, to share a little bit about yourself and some of those other accolades that you shared with me, all the things that you've accomplished, and a little bit too about your story, about how you got to this place here and, you know, the message that you have to share with us today.
Well, how I got here is by following my soul. And that's what I'm here to help other people do. And as we all know, as an entrepreneur, we're on a spiritual journey. So every time we want to grow our business or anytime we want to increase our impact or our income, it's always requiring us to become more. And so that's really what I work with. And of course, I've had so much magic in my life, and I call magic miracles, magic synchronicities. They're all the same thing, and they're all those things that logically you couldn't explain. So I have lots and lots of stories, and even the very beginning of how this all happened, because I really was not. I have a master's in chemistry and did medical research, and I have an MBA, and I was a marketing manager, and I was living in Boston at the time and just about to start my own business. I owned a home, and I was a single parent of 3 teenage children because I'd already been divorced, which is an interesting thing. As a little aside, that it was a very amicable divorce. We just didn't vibe anymore. And, but it was the opening salvo of standing up for myself and saying, you know, I matter, and this isn't working for me, and it isn't working for us, and what shall we do about this? And I'm going to just say that sometimes that's, even though that wasn't so magical or synchronistic, it still was an energetic opening that allowed, that said to the universe, I'm ready to stand up for me.
Absolutely.
I don't know why I wanted to add that.
You know, that is a catalyst. And, you know, I talk a lot about relationships, and that is very similar to my story as well. I had this same kind of moment. Like, I had this realization, like, holy shit, it's me. And it's me. I'm the one who is meant to change this too. And choosing myself, man, that was the best decision I ever made after a lifetime of really people pleasing and trying to do everything and living for everyone else. That decision to choose me was a catalyst to creating literally all of the things that I wanted to create in my life. Right. So of course it's a pivotal point. So thank you for sharing.
It is. But then I could tell lots of stories in this story of how I had my first healing practice in Austria, of all places. This was not my idea. And also I didn't know, I had to discover I was a healer. I wasn't aware, even though I was naturally born that way. And when I look back, I could see it, but I didn't have that awareness. And so, but I'll tell just a quick little fun story. And when it was time to leave Austria, I remember sitting in a little Platz in Vienna and getting the message that I should go to Hawaii. And I'm like, okay, let's see here now. I'm in Austria. Hawaii's halfway across the world. I've never been there. And I'm almost out of money. And is that right? This is what you want me to do? And it's kind of a fun story, because then I walked over to the Platz. There was a travel agency, and I picked up a book on Hawaii, and I opened it up and I went, oh, I have to go there, not knowing that it was Honolulu Bay on Kauai. I just knew I had to go there. And then I went next door to the bookstore, and they had a book on Hawaii in English on sale, a travel book.
Of course they did. You can't make this stuff up when the signs are there, right? Those synchronicities, those coincidences. You're like, okay, can't ignore that.
No. And so, because it never would have been my idea to do something like that. And then, of course, whenever you get that, you still have to say yes. This is the pivotal moment where, are you going to follow your soul, or you're not going to follow your soul? Because this was obviously not a logical thing for me to do. But I did do it. I went to Hawaii, and I wound up living on Kauai for 3.5 years. And, the first thing you have to do when you get to the island is you have to get a job, you have to get a car, and you have to get a place to live. And I was there, and just for fun, I met a woman, and she channeled Merlin, and I asked her, what's the deal on this? And he came back with hang loose. That's it. Hang loose. And 2 weeks later, I had all of it. So again, the magic. So that's just a little aside story, but there's many big stories of that I have also about following your soul. So that's why, and because I traveled all around, I wound up traveling in about 14 European countries and living in a few of them. I even had a year in Paris. I also traveled in about 42 or 43 US states and lived in a number of them. And all this travel and so on, I would create a new business and a new life wherever I would land. Even in a foreign country, within 2-3 days, I would have a business. And I like to say I lived a laptop lifestyle before they had laptops. And so let me tell you, it was a trick when you're in France and you have to figure out how to create a business, and you don't have a computer or any of that stuff. But anyway, so the reason I mention that is because it informs me in how to rebirth yourself and recreate yourself over and over again. And of course, on the entrepreneurial path, that's exactly what you're doing. Or when you're deciding that you'd like something more in your life, more wealth of any kind, it requires you. It gives you the opportunity to create a bigger version of yourself. And that's all of the teachings that I work with.
Yeah. I mean, it's in a way a constant evolution, and it's also living in the paradox, right? Because the tricky thing is, being grateful for what you have actually is like the I don't know what the right word is. I'll say portal, but I don't really love that word per se, but it's the gateway, if you will, to this ever evolving future. And so being joyful and content and happy in this now moment actually creates your ability to be joyful and happy and wealthy and abundant and all of the things that you desire in every now moment, right? Because the future is an abstract construct, right? We only have a series of now moments. And so if we don't master that ability to be present in the now moment, to be grateful, to be content, to be joyful, to be blissful. And I know not every now moment feels like it's worthy of that. But I promise if you do look for the good in the moment, you can find it. So it's being intentional about being present and being aware of all of the incredible gifts that we have, right? The present is, in fact, a gift, right? A present. So we have to just really, be aware that we are creating everything in this now moment, and that can really shift things for us. Choosing ourselves is a huge path opener, because now we have the ability to tap into our own inner wisdom. And I think so much of the time we've been so conditioned to seek validation, to seek external confirmation. And those are okay things. They're not a problem in themselves. It is nice to be validated, and it is nice to be confirmed from external sources. But when we're relying on that and not ourselves, we're not in touch with the truth within us, we can really get out of sync.
Well, I'll back up a little bit and just say that, of course, the present moment is your point of power. You don't have any power over anything else. And, and spending your time in the past or the future is just a waste of your energy. And also if there are things in the past that have been a problem, you don't really want to be bringing those into the present moment. But let's just talk about the Akashic Records, because I work with the Akashic Records, and these are the records of everything that's ever happened, but it also has the record of your soul in there and all of the experiences that your soul has had. So it's a rich resource. And when I read Akashic Records for business, I look at what people's soul powers are, what they were born to express here, and also what kinds of interferences might have been created as the soul has traveled that are now interfering. And these can really only be removed on that quantum level. So I call this your quantum DNA because it's your spiritual DNA, your quantum DNA that's creating your experience now. So that's one piece of it. But also, just as you mentioned, in this now moment, we are creating the blueprint of our future. So there's quite a lot of things here because you're creating that blueprint in your Akashic records, actually, by your beliefs, your thoughts, your stories, your perspectives, your emotions. It's a lot of different things. It's a holistic experience, and so it's. And the other part of that is that once that blueprint is created, now you're no longer creating anything, but what you're doing is receiving that or bringing it down into the physical. And so you have this magical power to be able to create the future. But as I teach it, when we talk about aligning with your soul. And feels like a very two-dimensional thing to me. It's really about harmonizing with your soul and taking into account all those different pieces and working with them. So in terms of being joyful or grateful, that is wonderful. But there's a problem in this manifesting community about spiritual bypassing, which is you must process your emotions because otherwise they're here in your body and your body has a frequency.
Yep.
And this is a very important part of manifesting. If you don't clear those emotions out of your body, they just sit there and help create. So we do need to go. And this is...
Yeah, it can't be like this good vibes only. Like
no.
Positive vibes only. That doesn't work because we can't operate in that. We are far more complex than that. And to say good vibes are positive only is to ignore a significant part of who we are as a whole ass human being. And so we need to create the space, just like you said, to not bypass it, but to witness it and not get sucked into, staying stuck in that space, which is probably the biggest challenge that there is to sit with it, but not sit for so long with it, right? Not identify with those negative feelings and thoughts, because if you're sitting in that space for a long time, like you said, you're creating your blueprint from that place. Acknowledging it is one thing, ruminating on it is a whole nother thing.
Yeah, well, of course, it's just like thoughts. People get nuts about thoughts and mindset and stuff like that, but your thoughts don't create. It's really your repetitive thoughts that create, which really comes down to your stories and your perspectives and stuff like that. There was something in there that I was going to say, and I'm not clear on what it was. But what I do is I teach practices that allow you. I think it was about processing your emotions. Yeah, you don't want to get stuck in them, but I don't know. It's not just witnessing them. Sometimes we have to viscerally experience them, and meaning we have to have the tears and the sadness and everything else. It's really, am I progressing? Do I have the tools? Do I have the practices that allow me to process those emotions so that I don't get stuck? And that's the work that I do. Part of the work I do is teaching those practices so that you have a tool bag. And because, as we said, we're here to continuously evolve. And so when we have practices that support us in evolving, then we have some way to respond to whatever's happening to us on a moment-to-moment basis. Yeah. And that's power. That's really being powerful. And that's how we create the future.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to create that space for those emotions to move because they are energy in motion. They will be stored in our body if we don't allow them, that spaciousness to move. Now, I would love for you to share a little bit before we, fully dive into the conversation about wealth. let's talk about what wealth is, because I think out in the world, there could be a lot of very different interpretations of the word wealth, and what that would mean could differ from person to person. So for the purposes of this conversation, I would love for you to expand on what wealth means in the context of this conversation so that we can all be on that same starting point together.
Well, wealth does include money, but it isn't exclusive to money. It's also your pleasure or your relationships, your experience of your business, your freedom, how much freedom you have, your time freedom. So it's a holistic. That's why I like the word wealth, because it's a rich, full experience. So every person's definition of wealth, or what wealth consists of, is different. So you get to choose. You have this bucket, we could say a chalice, let's say a chalice. And this is you can fill it up. This chalice is called wealth, and you can fill it up with whatever you would like to have in it. But you must have the tools to be able to call that in and to be able to receive it. That's another big piece, is that people often, you can put the images out there, and even the opportunities might come. If your vibration isn't right, you don't see them, or you don't respond, or you're unable to actually open up and receive it. So that's why I say that wealth is that rich, full experience, but so is harmonizing with your soul, a rich, full experience that allows that wealth to emerge.
Yeah. And I think, when we speak to getting into alignment, I like what you said about harmonizing. I'm very much the same. There can be a misconception about alignment being some sort of balance, which indicates some sort of middle point, but it's not about, like you say, it's not linear. It's multi-dimensional, which is more like where the harmonization comes in, as opposed to trying to balance. The balance immediately brings up like the image of a scale of two sides. And so this is not about just balancing two sides of the scale. It's about harmonizing all of those multi-dimensional pieces of time and space and your soul and in this physical experience, and all of those things, bringing them into something really powerful where you're standing in your power. What is the first step in your opinion, for bringing in? Because you're right. If we are not in the right space to allow things, and this can be for a lot of reasons, conditioning and all kinds of past traumas can bring us to this place where we don't feel safe to receive. And so what is your first step to start opening up, to begin to receive the wealth that we are meant for? Because I know we are meant for everything.
Yes, of course. Anyone that's, especially those of us that are change makers and holistic practitioners and spirit, we are meant to have wealth so that we can have greater impact in the world and help create the new world that we're here to create.
Yeah.
It's really simple, by the way, and that is to practice acceptance. And because every time you're resisting something, you're like this, you're punching yourself, kind of, so to speak.
Yeah, right.
And you're wasting your energy on this. So acceptance, and this can be acceptance of yourself, acceptance of others, acceptance of your circumstances, acceptance of how the world is. You have many places to practice acceptance, but I say the place to really begin is with self-acceptance. And just on a daily basis, take a look at how many you say things to yourself that are not nice. I say in one of my trainings, if you imagined a friend and that friend was always saying not nice things to you, or not being supportive of you, and telling you you're fat, and telling you, you don't look right, you're not doing the right things, and all of that stuff, how would you feel? Your energy would contract, and you would not want to be with that person. And
right.
We need our bodies to be, these are the vehicles in which we are able to manifest. We have to have our physical bodies. And so you can begin just with that. What kinds of things do I say to my physical body? Your body hears that and it responds, it contracts, and your energies contract. So self-acceptance, which is something that people might bypass a little bit, is really where you can begin. And because as you accept yourself, it's so much easier to accept everything else as well. Or acceptance of your circumstances is also another one. But so on a daily basis, just noticing what you're saying to yourself and then just saying, wow, I'm saying that. What would I prefer to say to myself about this? And sort of keeping a tabs on it. And then also we can add in the mix here, forgiving yourself for having done that to yourself.
Yeah.
So becoming loving to yourself and self-compassionate and self-caring is an easy entree point into wealth.
Absolutely. And the thing I think here where people really get hung up on with the acceptance is that they don't like it, right? And so they block themselves from accepting what is because they don't like it and they want to change it. And the very desire to change it makes them have this idea, and I know because I've been there myself, that I had a hard time accepting the things that I wanted to change. Now, those are two separate things, right? Acceptance is a recognition of where you are right now. It doesn't mean you have to stay there. It doesn't mean that you have to like the arm jiggle. It just means that you're accepting that this is my body, and starting to treat yourself lovingly is actually going to be, I know this might be mind-blowing because it was for me when I came to this realization that talking poorly about myself was a terrible motivator. It wasn't helping me move forward. It wasn't helping me create the change I really wanted. It was keeping me stuck, and I didn't even see it. And I've had a lot of clients who have kind of fallen into this sort of trap of trying to use guilt and shame and trash talk as a means of motivation. And then consistently finding that they're not getting the results that they want. And so when we were talking, they're, telling me, oh, I just thought if I could, beat myself up hard enough about it, essentially, that I would actually finally get motivated to do the change. But as soon as they said it out loud, they're like, well, that doesn't actually make any sense at all, does it? Because if we think about the way that we are, first of all, motivated, that's something that comes from taking action. Motivation follows action. It doesn't come before while you're just sitting there doing nothing. It starts because you start, right? So motivation is something that's a little bit tricky. But speaking compassionately and loving to yourself, even if you don't love your arm jiggle, even if, you may have spoken poorly to yourself in the past, like you said, it's time to let that go, because all of that is just serving to keep you stuck where you are. And this love, this compassion for yourself, this forgiveness of yourself for maybe trying things that weren't working before is the catalyst to you launching into having, the ability to create in your power.
Well, I would like to separate acceptance from change.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I don't want to mix those two things together. And you may, if you start trying to practice acceptance because you want to change, you're already at odds. Yeah. What acceptance does is it creates an opening space, and that's an allowing space, and then things can change. But if we start conflating the two, it's not a good move. And I would say about being worried about your arm jiggle, that's kind of very surface, because if you look at your body, just think about this body. Oh my God. All of this, the organs and the systems and all of this work, we are walking miracles. We are walking miracles. So if you start to think about your arm jiggle, just remember you're a walking miracle, that this body is amazing. You don't have to do you have to feed it and do the maintenance and that sort of stuff. But you walk around and this body just functions. Yeah. And it's very complicated. So
it really is.
Take out an anatomy book and take a look at what's in there. It's pretty,
we can barely understand.
Incredible.
We can barely understand how it is actually all working together. Science has taken a very long time to start to really truly understand, and there are still many questions that we don't have answers to. So you're right, absolutely. And that's exactly the point I was getting at. Like, the acceptance is just saying, this is where I'm at, right? It doesn't factor into what you may wish to create in the future. I mean, it's just a starting point. And so it is distancing those two pieces and saying, I can still accept myself, even if part of me wants to change, but I'm starting here, right?
Mm-hmm. Calling all strong women. Are you trapped in a cycle of people pleasing? Are you tired of saying yes when you really mean no? Have you been living for everyone but yourself? Welcome to Authenticity Unleashed. Imagine a life where you call the shots. Imagine living truly happy and free. Authenticity Unleashed was designed just for you, so that you can create the life and relationships that you desire and deserve. Picture setting boundaries without guilt and building relationships that truly lift you up. Ready for a new adventure? Register now and start your journey to a more authentic you. Craving more personalized support? Upgrade now and get tailored one-on-one guidance. Your life, your rules, your moment to shine. This is your Authenticity Unleashed.
If you're focused on a change, you're still not accepting. So, they just don't mix together. And the same with your circumstances, no matter what they are. If you rail against them or fight against them, you really have to just say, hey, this is the reality of it. And with regards to, we're here to explore and to discover. And so when something doesn't work, it's just saying to you, oh, well, what is the gift in this? What is it I'm here? What can I take out of this? Because that's how we develop partially, is having some kind of upper limit. That's what I work with people, having an upper limit and discovering what it is that you need to do in order to, or change or practice or whatever, there's many avenues to be able to go beyond that upper limit. So, that's the magic. That's what we're here for. And that constant evolving, going around the spiral and keep going, spiraling upward and upward.
And I know we were going to also talk about self-sabotage, because it really ties into what we were just talking about. So, I'd love to hear your thoughts on self-sabotage, because I feel like I kind of lovingly refer to this as cock blocking ourselves. My personal perspective is that often, this is not something we're intentionally doing. We're not trying to get in our own way. It is ultimately, to me, most of these things are about self-preservation. It's about safety. It's about, staying where we know what to expect, because the uncertainty is a challenge. And of course, we know challenges are opportunities, and that's where the real growth lies. That's where the magic and the miracles and all of those possibilities lie. But as humans, we tend to gravitate towards what is safe and familiar. And that's because of our amygdala likes to keep us safe. Our ego likes to keep us in the familiar because it's safe. But we're not meant to live there, repeating the same patterns day after day. That's not what we're meant for. We're on this ongoing evolution.
Yeah, self-sabotage. Well, first of all, there's a whole industry around this, and I find it extremely offensive to even use those words. Is this a kind and loving thing to say to yourself? And this is something that, as you say the words self-sabotage, you are creating opportunities for guilt, for shame, for rejecting yourself, for thinking that you're less than, for all of these things. So really, if you get in a place where something isn't working, just as I said a few moments ago, it's really an opportunity to look at, well, what's going on here, and stopping. And so this idea that you bust through self-sabotage is just not correct. The way, the loving and kind way and the more effective way of being with this idea of self-sabotage is actually to look at what is going on here, stopping and really, feeling in your body where there is some kind of something that's keeping you from moving forward, and focusing in, like, if you can, is locating it where it is in your body and really going in and having a conversation with it, of asking that part, what is the emotion that is attached to this? And it could be any number of things, but let's say it's anger or sadness or some other emotion, frustration, and then always being specific and asking, like anger can be, I'm ticked off, or it can be rage, sort of getting the temperature of it. Sure. And then, and asking, is that the right word for this? And then looking at having a dialogue with it. And you can do that so many ways. You can do that by having a conversation with it. You can do it by journaling. Sometimes people use left and right hand. You can use different colored pens. There's many, many ways. So the way is not, it is something that you discover as you're going along, is what is it that works best for me? And of course, asking your guides about it. What is this about? And asking your Akashic Record keepers, asking your guides, your spirit team, what is this about? What is it that I need to understand here? What is it I need to process? And so that I can move forward feeling safe in my body.
Exactly.
And then, of course, if it's a safety issue, which it often is, there's always going into your heart and connecting with your heart and getting into the vibration of love for, you can think about who you love, so, or what you love, if it's an animal or another person or whatever it is that brings that feeling of love to your heart, and allowing that to expand, and then just bathing your whole self in that love once it's been expanded is another way of soothing yourself so that you can actually move forward. So that's just a couple little things that you can do if you have that word appear. And I would not encourage the use of that word.
No. And a lot of people really do talk about it. And I feel like, exactly as you said, it places the blame back on you. So you're still stuck in this blame game with yourself and fault finding. And like you said, then the guilt and the shame come, because that's a natural response to being at fault. And then we really can get stuck in that. And so just like you said, really taking the time to look at where that resistance is and really, creating space for it. And then, we can create safety within ourselves. We can create safety within our environment. It's just taking a different approach, one where we're a little bit more empowered, as opposed to, the approach that we're doing this to ourselves and we're getting in our own way.
Well, and also this idea, I'm going to bust through my self-sabotage. No, that's that masculine. I don't want to say masculine. That's that more aggressive way of interacting. We get too much blame and stuff here, but that's more aggressive way of doing it, when what's really called for is self-compassion.
Yeah. To me, I really think that self-compassion is the catalyst to creating everything that we desire, right? It actually creates space for that to come into our life right now. Is when we're compassionate with ourselves, we allow that to start flowing. We're creating the space for it. And I think that, a lot of our conditioning has us thinking that self-compassion is selfish. And so I've talked about this a number of times before, because we have this sort of idea from the world around us that if we were to love ourselves, that we would care, if we care for ourselves, if we are compassionate towards ourselves, that somehow there's this element of this is selfish. And I want to bust through that myth, because self-compassion is actually just truly loving yourself. And that's our intended state, to be in this congruence with ourself, loving ourselves. This is what empowers us to do the things that our souls are calling us to do.
Well, I think it's, to me, the simple question to ask yourself is, the way that I'm treating myself, would I treat anyone else like that? Would I treat someone I loved like that? And that's, a way to just bring yourself back and forget about being selfish or any of that other stuff, and not have that conversation, and just have the conversation of, is this how I would treat someone I love? And if it's not how you would speak to, treat, or interact with someone you love, then it's not the way to be interacting with yourself. And so that just bypasses that whole conversation, and just because didn't they say treat your neighbor as yourself, or love your neighbor as yourself? And I always laugh at that in the sense that, first of all, that's contingent upon you loving yourself.
Right.
Because you can't love anyone else to a greater extent than you love yourself. And it's right there in this principle that is seen in all over the world in different forms, that, love your neighbor as yourself. God, love yourself first. Otherwise you can't really act on that.
Without that foundational relationship with yourself, it is definitely trickier to navigate relationships, not just with other people, but with money, with your business, with food, with, the media or the world at large. It starts with you, right?
Right. And then, of course, the most important one is your relationship with your soul. and connecting with your, that's why I call myself a soul liaison. I help people to connect with their own soul, because the soul came here, this body is just really meant to house the soul, and the soul came here to be able to express itself through this body. And if you don't connect with the soul and work with the soul, you're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to, and to me, that's your purpose. There's no that's another thing. There's no going looking in the haystack for your purpose. Your purpose is to express your soul. And so expressing your soul, and when you go to do that, it isn't just about self-compassion or self-love, but it becomes all of these other pieces that I spoke about that you need to harmonize with your soul. So it's those stories and perceptions and things like that. And there are tools, simple tools. I'm always about what's the simple way? Simple tools to be able to help yourself to come into harmony with your soul, so that when you do that, you are now, because source comes down through the center of your being, and you want to expand that flow of source. And money comes from source. It doesn't come from other people. It comes from source. It comes through your soul. And so that connection is what's going to guide you forward to create the wealth that you desire in your life, the kinds of things that you put in your chalice of wealth.
Okay, I'm just digesting. So good. The perspective and the wording that I use to reflect sort of what you said about purpose, the way I look at it is that our purpose is the experience, right? That is this experience of our soul in this meat suit here, experiencing what without that would just be theoretical. So to me, the purpose is the experience, whatever that is we want to create, that is that soul expression. To me, that's the same thing. It's just kind of a different wording for expressing something I think is very similar. Maybe you don't agree with me, but I see it as similar, just different wording, a slightly different take on the wording. I would really like to hear more that you could share maybe on connecting with your soul for anybody who maybe doesn't maybe resonate with that entirely yet. How can we explain what that might look like for someone who, if there's anybody listening, who doesn't quite feel like they have a connection with their soul? Where do they start in making that connection? Maybe they're very logical in their analytical mind. Maybe they're very grounded in this physical body, but they're maybe missing that soul component. What wisdom would you like to share on that?
There's always the simplest thing ever, and the most powerful thing is that you need to meditate. That's where you would start. And meditation can be very, very simple. Again, people make it into something more complicated than all it is a focal point. So you can take a little votive candle and light it and just look at the flame and keep coming back to the flame. Or one of my favorites, which is go outside and listen to the birds and let the thoughts come and go and keep going back to the birds. And you do that long enough and the thoughts just go away. And I can share a story about that. When I was living in Austria, I've been there about, 15, 16 months. I was there a year and a half, maybe 14 months. But I'd gotten really in my head about it, and I was at this point of I was being resistant. I'd like to leave. Where can I go? There's blah, blah, blah. So a friend of mine said, you need to go out into the mountains and meditate be silent for 21 days, and every day meditate with the birds for an hour. So I went to the mountains, and, my brain was going, and I went to the mountains and listened to the birds. And after about 3 or 4 days, the English was gone, but I spoke German by then. It was conversational German, and I could see the German, and it was like freight train loads of thoughts. I was like, "Oh, look at that!" But eventually, it went. And maybe it doesn't happen in 21 days. I was meditating before that. So meditation is, it's a practice that as you practice it, it gets easier. But it doesn't have to be hard. Like I said, listen to the birds.
Yeah.
Look at candlelight. And that's an opener for people that aren't spiritual. I work more with people who are change makers and visionaries and spiritual entrepreneurs, but that's where you would begin, is if you had no connection with your soul. And as you're doing that, you are connecting with your soul. Yeah. You are connecting with that source energy if you allow it. And so that's what I would say to somebody that's not, that start there. And then, of course, to come really in harmony with your soul, there are many other practices that we need to incorporate. And as I teach in my my class, my course, which I'm not even going to be able to think of the name of it. I'm terrible about names. I haven't, if anybody knows human design, I have a whole open head center, which means I don't remember anything. And I have the Wealth Amplifier, embrace the soulfully inspired path to ongoing prosperity. And notice I say ongoing, because once we have I don't want to say tool bag, but once we have a lot of practices that we can rely on, we can evolve ourselves. And that is really what I'm here to teach people, is to connect with their soul and evolve themselves, and to help them to connect with the Akashic Records. So connecting with the Akashic Records is more advanced, because you really already have to be a meditator in order to be able to get to that vibration. And connecting with the Akashic Records is just, it's a place of great love and compassion and just beauty. And just connecting with the Akashic Records is a healing process, because now you've got this, and it's also true for meditation, where you're now bringing divine energy down through your being. It's naturally healing. Of course, the Akashic Records are very high vibration, so you automatically are now getting healing just by the connection. So let's get everybody doing that.
Yeah, I definitely find meditation, and I hear a lot of different things about meditation, and I will say I am not a perfect meditator, and that was never the goal. I have some days where my mind is running and I can't quite get there, and that's okay, because I can just, in those moments, observe that my mind is busy, and I can be with that, and I'm still creating the space for me. It is still an act of self-care, even if it doesn't go perfectly, quote unquote, because it is a practice, and it does get easier, and it does create more space. I find the more you do it, right? The more consistently you show up and create that space and time for yourself, the more benefits you will receive from doing so. But there are a lot of people, and I, speaking as someone who used to be an accountant, very much in my analytical, logical mind, it still runs really busy from time to time. Okay, a lot of times, still from time to time, even in my special meditation space where I'm setting the intention to, not get sucked into the thinking. And so I feel like I just wanted to share, for anybody out there who feels like maybe their thoughts are too busy and that they're meditating wrong. This is another place you can perhaps work on exercising some of that extra self-compassion and forgiveness, and just create the space for you. This is what it is. It's about creating space. And one of the sort of tricks that I liked to use, I love looking at a candle or listening to the birds, or something that's something that you can kind of put your attention to, so that you're not getting sucked into the stories. Maybe you're visioning. One of the things that I used to do is envision the thoughts as a cloud just drifting in the sky, so that I wasn't pulling them down and getting into the stories. I would just see them. They would drift away. One of the things that I like to do is just look for the space between the thoughts. And the more that I sort of intentionally look for the space, the more I find it. And this, we talked earlier about serendipity and the miracles and the magic. We experience them when we are open to them, when we are not expecting like they must happen, but that we believe that they can and will happen. And so we see them when they happen. And if we're not open to that, sometimes we miss what's right before us. Instead of seeing what is right there, that serendipitous moment, we might not recognize it for the miracle that it truly is. So I think creating that space is an opportunity for us to allow all of those parts of ourselves to come into harmony, right? Without the judgment, without the I'm doing this wrong, or any of the pressure to be perfect at it or anything like that. And just starting wherever you're at, right? With love and self-compassion.
Well, I would question whether I would even put the word there is a right or wrong way to meditate.
That's what I mean.
I don't believe that's true. And I think that, if you're having, nature is always a way to connect and just Absolutely. Go out and just express appreciation for the beauty of the amazing wealth and abundance of the world around us, and just get into that space, because, those kinds of vibrations, you're also connecting with the more soul qualities. And, as far as seeing opportunities go, I had an experience one time where I was with someone, and I had just moved to San Diego, and this person had lived here for 7 years. And I knew more about what was going on in San Diego than they did. And I went, wow, that's really interesting, and so that was like an experience of people living in two different worlds. In other words, her vibration was such that she didn't see the things that I saw. So it's also that as you connect with your soul, and as you do go through these practices that allow you to harmonize with your soul, you see more opportunities. They were always there, perhaps, but you couldn't see them, and you just see more opportunities and more possibilities. And so that's one of the other blessings of the many of harmonizing with your soul, is you are continuously expanding into new potentials and new possibilities. For me too, like we talk about sending out a blueprint of what we'd like in our lives. It's always this or something better. There's a lot of things that have happened in my life that I did not ever say that I wanted to do them, and including living in Paris for a year, and which is the home of my heart in some ways. And I remember, as I was there, that I said, 2 years ago, someone channeled to me that your guides are saying they can arrange for you to live in your Paris. And I said, at the time I went, oh yeah, sure. And here I was 2 years later. Now there were all these serendipitous things that happened that created that experience, but I was not the one that put that pattern out there. But sometimes we have these magical things in our soul blueprint that are already there for us to enjoy, if we can connect with, if we're open enough to hear, to listen, and to be able to say yes, and then to be able to take those jumps. That's a lot about trusting yourself, trusting the source, trusting your intuition. Another piece of what's really important in order to harmonize with your soul is developing that trust.
Yeah, that self-trust, it can be tricky for someone when that's not a pattern that we've been in. So that is a really great point to start with, doing small things even to start building that self-trust, listening to your little nudges, wild as they may sometimes be, going to Paris or going to Hawaii or whatever those nudges are. The more we can listen to ourselves, the more evidence we will actually see that our intuition is guiding us to exactly where we were wanting to go on a soul level, what we were wanting to experience. Instead of shutting that down, instead of being hesitant because it doesn't make sense logically, we start trusting ourselves a little bit more. Then we can really see even more of these magical and miracle moments, these, quote unquote serendipitous or coincidental kind of experiences that actually make life just so incredibly fulfilling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And of course, trusting yourself there's simple things that you can do to be able to trust yourself. And that is keep your word to yourself. If you say, I'm not going to eat a piece of chocolate cake today, don't eat it.
Don't eat it. Yeah.
I picked a hard one.
Yeah, that is a hard one, isn't it?
Keeping honoring your own boundaries and expecting other people to honor your boundaries. And that's a lot about relationships. That's a whole other discussion. But, that's, again, learning to trust yourself. Yes, I trust myself that these are my boundaries and I'm free to express them. So you can start with those kinds of things to build trust within yourself and honoring your own values. If something feels out of integrity to you, you take action on making that be different. You don't stay with it. That doesn't build trust with yourself. So there are ways that you can build trust with yourself that are pretty simple.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is a really big game changer when you can start to trust yourself. And like you say, even the first step is just being impeccable with your word. right? Saying what you mean, meaning what you say.
Right.
Following through when you say you're going to do something, or don't say you're going to do something when you don't have intention of doing the thing, because now you're creating, an incongruence, right? And you're out of integrity just by what you've said versus what you're doing. So,
well, yeah. And then a simple one is also, if you say you're going to be somewhere at a certain time, be there at that time.
Yeah.
And show up on time, so that, these are practices that you can use that are building that trust. And
a little bit of awareness, a little bit of intention around what we're creating intentionally goes a long ways. I would love for you to share with us, first of all, how people can get in touch with you so that they can get more into your world and find out more about all of these topics. And as well, any offers that you would like to share with the audience. Let us know a little bit more about your program offerings so that people can decide if that is a great next step for them.
Well, I do a number of things. I do readings in the Akashic Records, and I also have a one-on-one mentoring program. But I also have a group program in which I teach about these different practices and support people in connecting with their own Akashic records and making changes in the records. We didn't even get to discuss that, but you can also intentionally make changes in the records. And so that is, and I have a little free program that I've got running called the Gateway to Wealth, which talks about some of these things and gives some other practices and healing experiences. And you can register for that. I think that Christy will put a link in for that,
Okay.
that class. So, and then I do readings in the Akashic Records where I actually tell you what your soul gifts are and how you can use them in business. And we do a clearing, and that is magical in terms of what it can do for you. And if you'd like to explore that further or any of my other offerings, you can arrange a call with me. And would get you on my calendar for us to have a conversation. And I also, I send out weekly channel messages from the Akashic Records to my list. And you can go on my website, serenacurran.com, and sign up right there and find out more information about each of these programs. And so what is really coming up now is my new group program, the Wealth Amplifier, Embrace the Soulfully Inspired Path to Ongoing Prosperity. And that's what we've been talking about this morning. So that's also coming up. And, get in touch. I love to talk with people and get to know them and see what we can cook up as far as how you can get more in harmony with your soul.
Beautiful.
And make the life you want.
Yeah, because you deserve it. That is what is meant for you. And so we want you to experience all that is meant for you. I would love to invite you, as we're coming to a close, to share any last thoughts or messages that you would absolutely love for the audience to take away. Can be a reminder of something we've already covered or something completely new, whatever is sort of on your heart to share, just to wrap up the conversation.
Well, think of yourself as a ray of divine light walking here on the earth to help presence the beauty of source and to connect with others in that beautiful way.
We are a gift, right? Each and every one of us are a gift, and the world needs your particular special brand of magic. Right.
And that's why I love the work I do, because I work with those change makers and those spiritual entrepreneurs and those visionaries. And, so for me, they're going to go out and make a ripple effect. And so I'm delighted to be able to help them to have greater impact and income and to expand their business.
And what an absolute gift. Honestly, I really, truly, I say it often, we change the world from the inside out. We change, by leading ourselves, by going first, for doing the things that we desire to create. We go ahead and we create that, and then it ripples out of overflow, right? We love ourselves, and that makes that overflow. If we continuously practice self-love, that overflows into the world, and it allows us to just spread that divine love all over the place. And that is what I truly believe is going to change the world.
Well, we are doing it. We're creating a new world right now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing this beautiful conversation. Again, let's go out there and let's create wealth by our own definitions, right? Success by our own definitions. And it's just been a really lovely conversation. So thank you for sharing all of that with us today.
Thank you for having me, Christy.
Yes,
thank you for having me. And thank you for letting me share with your audience. I'm so happy to connect with all of you. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I love you all. Now let's go do some epic shit, shall we?
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Create Your Happy's special bonus season. I trust this real, raw, uncut conversation will fuel your inner fire and provide you with the practical action steps needed to propel you forward. It's time to unlock your path to consciously creating an impact and leaving your legacy. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and share with other women in your life who could use a little extra inspiration today. My guest and I would love to hear from you. You'll find the links to connect with us both in the show notes. And if you're ready to take your life, relationship, and business to the next level, I invite you to consider working with me one-on-one. Together, we'll up-level every aspect of your beautiful human journey to create the fulfilling relationships that you desire and deserve. Reach out to learn more about how we can embark on this transformative journey together. As always, get out there, have fun, be you, and create your happy.